Good morning, BridgeWay. It is great to see you here today. I'm Pastor Ron, if we haven't had the chance to meet yet. We are in a series called Multiply. I've been looking at how God does math, how God multiplies in ways in which we could never understand or fully appreciate. And this is all part of a larger conversation that I want to catch you up on this morning. In fact, I'm not alone in this. You're going to be hearing in just a moment from Rick Good. He is our head elder. But for our future is our opportunity to reach more people here at BridgeWay with the love and grace and forgiveness of Jesus Christ. In fact, today begins the journey we have towards the financial portion of this campaign. And we're going to be speaking about this not just today, but as you already heard in our informational meeting, as well as some other opportunities coming up. But I wanted to give our head elder, Rick Good, an opportunity just to kind of bring you up to speed on where we've been. I realize many of you are new or maybe just kind of coming up to speed with our story. And he's also going to give you all the details on the For Our Future capital campaign. So if you could put your hands together and welcome our head elder, Rick Good, to join me on stage.
Morning to those online visiting with us today too, all you visitors. Yeah, so I'm here to give new news, good news for the future of our church. Let me give you a little bit of background of how we got to where we're at today. We rolled out, we're in our third year of our 10-year vision right now. So when we had put this 10-year vision together, the end goal is to grow our ministry. Have more capabilities here, more family time, life together. So as we were looking at that, we have limitations here at the church that we have looked at over the last 2 years, and we've said, to fulfill this mission, we need to grow. Now we had a stakeholder meeting here back October 29th. Some of you might have been here, if you weren't. We had probably, I don't know, upwards of 60, 70 people that came. We had someone facilitate it. Broke out in small groups, walked around the whole campus, and asked you what you would like to see in the future of this church. So we compiled all that information, and this information that we call the primary needs, there was really 6 top needs that we were looking at. We need better offices for our staff, a kitchen, a multi-purpose room for larger gatherings. The BSM area, there's a dock area, we store a lot of tables and chairs. We'd like to expand that out where that overhang is, make that kind of like a 4-season room, have more room for our BSM students. Just kind of clean up our campus and take advantage of this beautiful land we have here. Then we have a pavilion that's over here, that rusty old structure that we can't tear down, but there's an opportunity there to make that an outdoor pavilion, for wedding services, other gatherings. So we took this information, then selected a builder, a design build company. We went through 3 different firms, and as your elder team, we looked at what gave us the best opportunity for growth, and we chose Dan Voss. And they provided us drawings, they provided us a rough order of magnitude cost at that time. And you've probably been hearing over the last month or so, that cost $6.2 million. Seems a lot. It is a lot. But when it comes to God's kingdom, I don't think there is a limit. So our job right now, we felt comfortable that let's go with the same number. Let's go with this number. No need to skinny it down. We feel this is not to exceed number because there's so much that's been built into it. Let me just touch base again on our 10-year vision. You've probably seen this slide. If you haven't and you're new to it, it's really just the areas that we want to grow this church for our community. But as I've touched on, there's like opportunities that we want to do that are more family time, life together. Those are 2 key areas. We can still minister and do these things, but we can really do this and bring more people and multiply this church if we take care of what this beautiful campus we have here. We've got this great area. Let's expand it. A little bit on the plan itself. There are some pictures that are outside, kind of posted on the wall and stuff. You saw that video. It's a great video, but the primary focus was on the congregation, the new congregation, and the old Phase 2 section that's over there right now. You can see the new entrance. You kind of walk in the entrance, new foyer, kind of an entrance to the J-Seekers program from there, and then you get into the congregation. But yeah, 6.2 million is not just that. It touches everything on this campus. We're talking about taking the, make this area where we're at today a multi-purpose room, an area that we can do large family gatherings. Pickleball, that was a very popular request. Basketball, but have that kind of opportunities here during the weekday. We talk about offices for our staff. We would like to take not phase 2, but our square over here and make that our offices. We'd actually have a second level with kind of a conference room and another meeting room, expand opportunities to meet and have the facilities there for us. The BSM I touched on, we knocked out that area, enclose it. There's a new kitchen that we'd want to make in, that capability to have that, and then expand a little bit of the BSM's kitchen, where they kind of have their area where they can meet on the Sunday nights and Wednesday and take advantage of additional capabilities. And then J-Seekers would be modified as well. It touches everything. And then what you don't see on here is the new parking lot. You saw that in the video, and then the pavilion outside. All that is enclosed in that $6.2 million. So there's opportunities that we can scale down, yes. But God has spoke to us and said, go for it. And we feel that. We really do. As your leadership team, we feel we'll go forward. We have contingency plans if things don't pan out. But hey, why not try? All right, for the capital campaign, we do have a leadership team that's together. I lead that team right now as we are rolling out this information to you today. What we're trying to prepare you for is your gift. And through that preparation, you're going to see pledge cards that are going to be available here. And they're going to actually be mailed out to everybody that we have addresses on. We'll mail them to your household with a letter explaining the process. And if you don't have, if you're not in our address area, we'll have piles of the pledge cards that you can do. You can also do it online. It's going to be a 2-year pledge. So you're going to look at that and say, how can I bless the church within a 2-year period? And you have opportunities to do monthly, weekly, lump sum. So there's ways of doing this. The informational meeting that Ron talked about, or Justin talked about, is February 2nd, not the 9th. So scratch that. They're after both services. We're going to be about 30 minutes. It's an opportunity for you to come in, talk to us, and ask us anything that's on your mind that's not answered yet. So again, that's next Sunday after both services. We are looking for those pledge cards to be returned to us by the 16th. We're going to have a special Sunday, Pledge Sunday, on February 16th. There is a informational hub on our websites, on the app, and on our website that you can go to. It has a bunch more information on the capital campaign. We have FAQs listed there, so hopefully if you have some questions, maybe they're questioned there with answers. If not, there's an area at the bottom, provide questions or comments to us, and it comes right to us, and we'll have that all put together and provide responses to that. Then there's a donate tab on there. So today, if you feel compelled, if you'd like to meet with us, there's going to be a prayer team in phase 2. After this service, we're just going to do a quick prayer just for this opportunity for our church. So if you feel compelled, come join us. All right, capital campaign. Yeah, they're tough to do. This is my first time doing it. I'm very excited about it, really am. But it is a time for spiritual growth. Think about it. It's a time for building our faith that hopefully stirs our heart and our spirit. The campaign and our end goal is it's not just a building. That's just a result. Yes, we get that benefit, but the focus is on our ministry. Going back to our 10-year vision, doing the things that we need to do for this community, to grow, to multiply this community. It's just exciting opportunities lay ahead if we go through with this. And just consider this a journey with God. It's an opportunity, a step with him through this process. Because guess what? He'll be with us. He will hold on to this, and he he will come through. I firmly believe this is a leadership team here. He'll believe even amid the difficulties. We have the enemy that's here every day trying to take this away from us. We can overcome that through God. And we have to trust in him. If we trust in him, he has great plans for this church and this community to grow and multiply. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rick, and thank you to the entire elder team. Appreciate all the leadership we have here at BridgeWay. Just doing an outstanding job. Let me just say this. 21 days. Can you say that with me? 21 days. That actually is the time, the window between now and Pledge Sunday. And I just have been praying that God would prepare my heart, prepare your heart for that opportunity. And to do that this morning, I want to jump right into things. In fact, I want to look at a story in 1 Kings chapter 17. If you got a Bible, I'd love for you to follow along. This is an amazing story about Elijah. In fact, Elijah is one of the pinnacles of the Bible, one of the pinnacles of the Old Testament. And I've just really, really enjoyed reading through the Old Testament lately. And we're going to find ourselves in this man's life and journey. I think there's so many parallels to what Elijah's going through and what we have in front of us. Now, one of the unique things about Elijah is he's a miracle worker. In fact, God works many miracles through Elijah's life. In fact, I counted 8 miracles that Elijah does in his life. You're going to read about 2 of them this morning. And I'm really excited for you to see these. One last thing you need to know about Elijah is he's in a season of preparation. God is preparing him, just as he is us as well, for kind of the next step in his life and in his journey. So let's jump in. I'll give you a little more context as we read this. This is the first miracle. You're going to read 2 this morning. The first miracle found in 1 Kings chapter 17, starting in verse 7. It says, sometime later the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. There's a severe drought and famine. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called, and bring me, please, a piece of bread. She responds, as surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son that we may eat it and die. Got pretty dark here for a moment. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid, go home and do as you have said, but first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family, for the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. This is amazing. This is a miracle that's quite crazy. It fits kind of this whole idea of God multiplying what we need most. But what's maybe the most unique about this miracle is it happens through Elijah in a land that does not believe in God. In fact, the people in Zarephath would have been non-God worshippers. It would have been a pagan country. They had many idols that they had set up and that they worshipped, but they did not believe in the God that Elijah believed in. In fact, idols are something that we have today. You don't have to set up a shrine to believe in idols or to worship idols. We have all kinds of idols in our day today. I think there's so many parallels. We'll idolize fashion. We'll idolize bank accounts. We'll idolize our neighbor's house or car. Let's not think that we don't have idols as well. And Elijah comes to this woman because there's a severe famine in this land. And as I've been saying, things change when God speaks. We see that God speaks to Elijah. The word of the Lord comes to him. And we've seen this throughout this series. Seems to be a pattern. God speaks to Samuel. Last week we looked at how God speaks to Gideon. God's going to speak this morning through Elijah, and he's going to speak to you and to me. God is always speaking. And there's something about this that I think we need to learn in our faith, that when God speaks, we have the opportunity to step in and to do what he calls us to do. We call that faith. And what you see this morning is when people begin to walk in faith, the miraculous happens. The miraculous is what's capable. And here's the deal, this miracle that comes about, I said you're going to hear two this morning. This is the first miracle, and I would say that these are sort of miracles that are on kind of different levels. And I need you to see this morning. I don't normally use that kind of language, that spiritual life is on different levels. But actually, when it comes to these miracles, there is definitely a first level miracle and a next level miracle that we'll read about in just a moment. This is miracle one. Let's call it level one. Elijah's told, go to Zarephath, go to this widow. He's given really clear direction. And he asked this woman for a drink of water. Now, do you notice in the text, she doesn't even respond. She doesn't question him. She just turns around and starts on her way to get water. Remember, this is a severe famine in the land. And this is because in that day, the culture was all about hospitality. Someone would literally give you their last cup of water that they had. I don't think that would work today, right? I mean, what are the chances if you ask somebody on the street, hey, can I have a cup of water or a cup of coffee? I mean, about 50-50, right? Like someone might give you a cup of water, or they may just tell you to take a hike. This lady goes and is on her way to get him a cup of water, and then Elijah says, oh, and by the way, can you also bring me back some bread? Like, I don't know, some fresh, homemade sourdough bread. I know, I see some of you, you're really into that. Love that stuff. And this is when she speaks up, right? She tells him what she's going through. In fact, she's gathering some sticks. Scholars would say that this just reinforces how destitute it was in the land. There's no water, there's no food, there's not even any fuel. Like they literally burned up every tree in this region of Zarephath. She says, I'm going home, and the little bit I do have, I'm going to make a last supper for my son and I. We're going to eat it, and then we're going to die. I mean, this is incredibly dark. I think for all of us in the room, this probably is something that maybe you find harder to believe than the miracle itself, right? Like, I don't know about you, but just being hungry isn't something that I struggle with on a daily basis. I eat plenty. I eat all the time. In fact, I think the only time I'm not eating is when I'm preaching. In fact, right after this message, I'll probably go right back to my office, have a little snack before the second service, right? Like, that's just kind of how we operate. And I think it's important for us to really kind of enter into what this widow was experiencing. Now, we should do this more than just while we're reading the text. We should do this as a natural part of how we live, just a rhythm of life to enter into the struggle and the pain of other people. And you can certainly do that in West Michigan. There's lots of opportunities to do that. But I would also encourage you to travel, to go to third world countries where you see hunger and survival at a very minimal level. I've had so many opportunities here that I'm grateful for, to travel with many of our global partners. I've been to Kenya, I've been to Puerto Rico, I've been to Guatemala many, many times with our partners, Bridge of Hope. And something about being in those locations, especially in Guatemala, just changes your view of how people are struggling and barely getting by. In fact, my wife, Sean, went on the very first trip with BridgeWay to Guatemala. She went before the pastor, and she tells this story that still to this day, it breaks my heart. If you've never been with our team to Guatemala, I would highly encourage you to go with Bridge of Hope. But the process is very much the same every year. You build homes during the week, and then at the end of the week, you dedicate those homes. And part of the dedication is these widows will share some of their story, and it's very similar. All the stories are the same. They tell about how they lived through this war with the government and the rebels. They were basically kind of caught in the middle, and the men in the town were all killed, every single one of them. And now this widow is left to survive, care for children, and barely get by. And they talk about how they're praying for God to hear their prayer. And you realize that you're the answer. You actually are what God has sent to build a home and provide for this widow. And the story my wife tells is this one widow began to say that she lives, she gets by, and she's so grateful that she gets every day 2 corn tortillas. And I don't know about you, but that's like a snack for most of us, right? And she said, I get those 2 corn tortillas every day unless one of my children are hungry, and then she goes without. And it just shows you how needed it is. I'm so proud of this church for coming alongside of those needs and every year traveling and being a part of that mission. I think this death for this woman, though, is the worst kind of death. She's going to die of starvation, but it's worse than that. She's actually going to die, and she's going to die of a starvation of her soul. She doesn't know the Lord. In fact, she says that in verse 17, is, surely as the Lord your God lives. She says, Elijah, you have a God, but I don't have a God. And she's going to die the worst possible death, eternal separation. And this should bother us. This should kind of get under our skin and say, who is this? Who would ever suffer physically and spiritually? And when you begin to understand that, then you begin to understand this mission and this project and this For Our Future campaign of seeing God turn spiritually hungry people, not just physically hungry, but spiritually hungry people into fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. Now, this miracle Elijah brings is hope to this woman. He tells her, go and do it anyways. You don't think you have anything, but just go, and God will multiply the oil and the flour. It'll never run out, and boom, it's a miracle, right? Like it's endless breadsticks and salad bar at Olive Garden. She's got all that she needs. And I realize that for some of you this morning, you hear this story, and you can't help but have a little bit of skepticism. Like, well, does God still do, I don't know, like I go to my cupboard this afternoon and it's the same as what was in there before, Ron. Like, I'm so glad you picked this story about multiplication. It fits really neat with your series. But maybe some of you, you've got some significant skepticism towards miracles. Like, God doesn't do that today, and you just kind of carry that with you in your faith. And I realize that that's a struggle because many people struggle with miracles, and a lot of churches do as well. In fact, just kind of a little bit of theology. In fact, churches kind of can fall into two camps. One camp would be what we call the cessationist view. These are churches and people that believe that miracles have ceased. When God closed the canon that we know as the Bible, well, the miracles are done, and there's no more miracles done in the modern era. And I want to be really clear this morning that we are not one of those churches. We are not a cessationist church. We would fall in the camp of the continuationist or continuism church, in that we believe God still works miracles, and they may not look the same. They may look very different from these miracles in the Bible, but it's still the act and the work of God. Just maybe to say it more simply, we believe in the supernatural. And we believe that God will do that we can't, but that ultimately he can. And I don't want to get up and make this all about, miracles I've seen. I've seen many, many things that I find only explainable by God. But I will tell you one miracle this morning. And maybe this is miracle kind of on level one, fits this part of the story. But many of you know that we've been in this building, and we've been here now for 7 years. Actually, I feel a little bit like deja vu because we're doing a capital campaign again, and we've done lots of those. In fact, this is our 4th campaign. It took us 3 campaigns to get into this building back in 2017. Many of you were a part of that, and I'm so grateful for that. It was a tough season, and we raised a lot of funds, but we still had to borrow significantly from the bank. We borrowed about $1.2 million and have been very good stewards as leadership to pay that down, because borrower is slave to the lender, and we don't want that. And yet we still had this mortgage up until Christmas. And somebody, I'm not going to go into details, knew about this issue, and they paid off the mortgage of this church. Can you believe that? You should be clapping right now. Praise God that God would do that and work through someone to say, hey, I can see a need and meet a need. Unexplainable by God's actions. No one asked this person to do this, but God saw that we needed to kind of start this next phase with debt-free and to begin to move in that direction. And in the season that we're in, if we're to have any hope about God multiplying our resources, God multiplying our reach, God multiplying the number of people who are saved, we have to first believe that the supernatural is possible. I need for you to believe this, to maybe in faith kind of step over that mountain of skepticism. In fact, I think it's actually maybe a little bit easier than some of you could make it out to be. In fact, when I read this story, to me, it's really just a story about burdens that become blessings when we rely on God. Elijah, this man of God, invites this woman to the blessing of a life with God. And it didn't even seem that hard for God, right? I mean, some flowers, some oil, doesn't even seem to be a struggle. And God meets this woman, meets this widow, meets her son in the ordinary places of life. And this is my promise, this is my plea with you, that if you believe, that God will meet you too. He'll meet you in the average, everyday needs of life. He met this woman in the kitchen, right? He'll meet you in whatever average, everyday, normal place you find yourself in. It could be in your work, or maybe it's at your gym, or it's in the school that you're a part of. God will meet you. Burdens become blessings when we rely on God. Next miracle, if you found that miracle hard to believe, you're really going to struggle with the next one, because I said these are miracles on levels. That was level 1. Let's go next level. Picking back up in verse 17, it says, sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. Translation, he died. She said to Elijah, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" "Give me your son," Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, "Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I am staying with by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out to the Lord, "Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, "Look, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are the man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth, is the truth." I mean, this is an incredible miracle. We read it all the way through, so there's no shock and awe. You saw what God did, but you have to admit for a moment, I mean, this must have been just horrific for this widow. I mean, she's a widow. She's already lost her husband, and now she's lost her son as well. I mean, I can't even imagine. I stand up here, and I can't even imagine if I had to preside over my wife's funeral or over any of my children. I get just choked up just thinking about that would be like. And yet I know some of you have gone through that, and maybe even worse, and you read the story and you're glad to get to the end of it, but you also can sympathize with this woman. I mean, the middle, it's hard, right? I mean, she's angry. "What do you have against me, man of God?" All of a sudden, the miracle worker is in a completely different position with this woman. It's a good question. And God, again, Elijah has to lean in. "God, you've multiplied oil and flour, and now I need you to multiply this life back into this boy." And it's so bizarre, is it not? I mean, like, this is one of the freaky places in Scripture. I mean, what is this? He lays the boy down, and then he stretches himself out on the boy 3 times. That seems awkward at minimum, embarrassing at work. I mean, like, it's just weird. And I read all this week, kind of a little extra time with the snow days, and trying to find some sort of scholarly guidance on this, and read, and here's what we know: nothing. Nobody really knows why he went through this whole weird thing. I mean, maybe all I could come up with is this became part of the test for Elijah too. Like, are you going to pray once and give up? Or are you going to keep seeking me in this miracle? And he keeps going back to God. "God, raise this boy." What miracle? Let me just ask you this morning, what miracle have you given up on? And God is saying, you tried once? You prayed once? You believed one time? Maybe you've got to stretch yourself out again and again and again. And this is a test. And I think the test of faith, whether you believe or not, is an opportunity for the supernatural. Let me just say this, that tests become testimonies. That out of the tests that we struggle and work through and rely on God, those painful moments, those setbacks that we experience, out of those can become the greatest ministries and the greatest stories that you get to share with the people around you. I'll just say it this way, that God God really isn't real until he becomes real to you. I think he became incredibly real to this woman. She actually echoes that this God of yours, Elijah, he's the truth. And again, this is pagan country, pagan territory. And this is what God does. This is what I'm so excited about, as Rick shared in his talk as well, that this becomes opportunities, not just for us to, see a building completed and to hang some drywall on some walls, but to actually trust that God will do more with life than we could ever do on our own. And this is the hope that we have. I want to leave you with two things this morning. I want to leave you with a question, and I hope this question challenges you to kind of a personal level this morning. So I want to give you a question that challenges you, and I also want to leave you with a resource this morning. The question that I want to challenge you with is this entire story revolves around Elijah and an unsaved woman, unsaved boy, and it's really an opportunity for him to pray for her. So I'm just asking you, challenging you this morning, who's God calling you to pray for? And specifically, the people in your life, in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your school, wherever you are, who are those people that have needs, and their biggest needs are at a spiritual core? They don't know the Lord. And it's a problem. And this morning it becomes a problem. And for Elijah, instead of ignoring the problem, he intercedes, he prays for this woman and introduces her to the God that would ultimately be her God as well. And we know that God is our Savior Jesus. And I want that to be what you hear this morning, because this is the opportunity we have. As I said, 21 days of preparing us for whatever gift you choose to give. That pledge is between you and God. That's totally up to you. My hope is over these next 21 days that God would just begin to meet with you. He would speak with you. He would grow you in your faith, and that you would have this heart that breaks for people that don't know him. I want to give you, as I promised, a resource for you to take with you today. And as I said, 21 days, God speaks. I believe God speaks most clearly through his word. And so I have just a 21-day Bible reading plan. This could begin for you tomorrow. That would take you right up to February 16th as Pledge Sunday. You can either take a picture of this before you leave. It's also on our website. It's on the BridgeWay app. You can get to all those places just by scanning that little QR code on the seat pocket in front of you. But this is really designed to be really a simple way to access God on a regular basis this week. I'm going to be doing this as well. So tomorrow morning I'm reading, as I've already read and preached on, 1 Samuel chapter 3, just God speaking through Samuel. And I'd encourage you to start there with us as well. Let's do this together, and let's see God do the miraculous in our midst. I'm going to invite Charles and the team to come up and to lead us in a time of worship. And so if you would just bow your head and pray with me, please. Father God, I just thank you so much. I thank you for this story and this reality that you move in supernatural ways that we can't always understand and certainly can't explain. And yet, God, we want that. We desire that you would do that here in our midst, here in our church. And so, God, we want to just hear your voice and take a step in faith with you. God, I just pray for every single person that this journey would be about being with you and meeting with you in their quiet time. We love you, God, and we give you our words of praise. It's in your name we